What's up YouTube, it's Gmo here bringing you a very different video from what my small and yet faithful subscriber base is used to. This video is going to cover Halo Reach on PC, and Halo really isn't like a normal FPS game, Battlefield, Call of Duty. You miss a shot or two, it doesn't mean instant death. In Halo, maybe not instant, but the game punishes you pretty heavily for making mistakes, especially missing shots, and even more so whenever you are up against a much better player than you, because they're probably not going to be missing shots. Today we are going to cover some of the basics on how to improve your aim in Halo Reach with a mouse and keyboard. We will go over the settings to help dial in your aim, as well as a few different ways to practice and also warm up your aim. Just a quick disclaimer though, before we start, I am not great at Halo Reach. I just used these tips and thought of some different tips that might help other people as well as myself to improve my aim, especially with the mouse and keyboard, because I am not the greatest with a mouse and keyboard. With all that being said though, let's go ahead and hop right into the video. The first thing I would like to go over is the settings. Now, the obvious setting on everyone's mind, or at least my mind, when starting a new shooter game is sensitivity. What sensitivity do I want to play on? Sensitivity is a very subjective thing. I play on higher on controller. Some people play on really high sensitivity. Some people play on medium, and some even play on lower. With a mouse and keyboard, I started playing much higher, and it's because I was using pretty much all wrist movements and no arm movements. If you want to learn more about wrist and arm movements, I would highly suggest checking out a different video on those, but learning about those will help you quite a bit. Sensitivity though is something I am still trying to fine-tune for my personal play style. The next setting I would like to talk about is the centered crosshair. If you're a veteran to mouse and keyboard with FPS games, it's definitely the way to go. Most FPS games have a centered crosshair. Turning this on though will raise your crosshair from the bottom third of the screen to the middle. Halo by default and on console has it lowered, and they do this to kind of help show off the scenery of the game. It's just for aesthetics for the most part, but it kind of feels clunky. Centering it will make the mouse and keyboard feel much more natural and a whole lot less clunky. The third setting I would like to talk about is mouse smoothing. The first clip will be without mouse smoothing, and the second with. It's very similar to the modern aim control setting with a controller. It helps smooth out your movements with your aim and makes them quite a bit less jerky. And that being said, it makes it easier to track targets and stay on target. This is a setting though that you will have to play with on your own. Maybe do what I'm doing in the clips and aim at a wall and strafe back and forth and see how big of a difference it makes. The final setting I would like to talk about is zoom hold. Now, it would be quite a bit odd to have to hold down your zoom on a controller, but with a mouse, it feels much more natural. Turning it on won't make your aim god tier by any means, but what it does is it allows you to enter and exit your scope much quicker, and that would help you with holding down a long line of sight and then an unexpected enemy decides to pop up for those closer range engagements. Now we're on to tips. The very first thing I did when I booted up Halo Reach on PC was played the first campaign mission. This allowed me to get a feel for the aim and tune my sensitivity a little bit. Like I said, I went up at first and now I'm coming back down. I think I went up to a 2.1 and decided to go back down to a 1.3. Playing through the campaign gives you moving targets that are practically practice dummies on easy difficulty. You can turn on the mythic skull to give the enemies more health, and this causes them to take more bullets before death, which is a good thing if you're practicing your aim. You can track them longer when they have more health and learn how to stay on target for a much longer period of time. Another great alternative to this, though, would be to set up a custom firefight match with whatever weapons you want to practice with, and it helps with tracking moving targets, like I said previously, and snapping from target to target. You can set up how much health you have, what kind of weapons you spawn in with. I believe you can do infinite ammo as well. I would recommend to start off with your settings, campaign, or even a custom game, just so you can move around the map a little bit and get a feel for the mouse and keyboard movement. And then whenever you want to warm up, go to Firefight, set up the rules that you want to practice with. If you can turn on Mythic in the custom Firefight, I would recommend it. It will give you much more time to kill your enemies, I guess, which will allow you to have more time to track them and practice tracking. The final tip I have for just aiming specific would be headshots. Headshots in Halo are very, very important when it comes to time to kill. With the DMR, it is 4 shots to lower the shield, and I believe that can be anywhere on the body. But the 5th shot is always a kill if their shields are lowered. With just body shots, though, it is 7 to 8 shots to kill. 4 to lower the shields, and then another 3 to 4 for the kill. Luckily, there is a game mode that most of you probably already know about that allows you to practice aiming for the head, and there is an entire online playlist for it. That game mode is SWAT, and it's definitely the best way to practice aiming for the head and snapping to the head. You're going to get melted in one shot if you can't adjust to snapping to the head, but it's definitely a great way to practice it. And I think some modes have the Magnum, but most of them, if not all of them, you spawn in with a DMR, so you're using the one-shot weapon, you just have to get the headshots. And it definitely helps, because this will kind of transfer over to other playlists, such as just Basic Slayer or whatever else you may want to play. Kind of helps with snipers. Snipers are a whole different ball game, though. Their learning curve is rather high if you want to hit the headshots. I have a couple of general purpose tips as well that I would like to address. They might not directly affect aim, not all of them at least, but they have something to do with your aim in some sorts. The first one is bloom. Everyone knows about it. The faster you shoot a weapon, the less accurate it will get. The hip on it spreads, if you want to call it the hip, the reticle, it will spread more and more, making it much less accurate. And the way to counter this is to pace your shots. You don't want to go full-blown auto or pull the trigger as fast as you can. I think the needle rifle is the only exception. You can kind of hold it down and it's still a laser beam. It takes a little bit of practice to stop spamming with these weapons, though. You will definitely need to catch yourself doing it a couple times to slow down your shots and work on more so being accurate than your fire rate with the DMR and even Magnum, but more specifically the DMR. Next, we have Sprint. Yes, it's nice to move around the map much faster, but it definitely does come at a cost. Sprinting has a very punishing weapon ready time, which is the time from you sprinting to the time you're able to fire. And if you sprint straight into an enemy, it may give them a 1 or 2 shot advantage. And that is huge in a game that already punishes you enough for making mistakes. That being said though, don't get caught sprinting around a corner and straight into the enemy, because odds are they have that advantage on you and you've already lost that gunfight before you even start firing. One more thing to mention about sprint too is it is very, very loud, and anyone with a headset will hear you coming a mile away. They'll know you're coming up behind them, they'll know they're under you or above you or whatever it may be, but sprinting is very loud. Strafing is something that will help with your aim a little bit. Not a crazy amount, but it does help. The main advantage of it though is it throws off your enemy's shots, and it'll help you win more gunfights a little bit easier. But there is an aim advantage to it. The main aim advantage is there will be engagements where your reticle is positioned at the correct height of an enemy, and it's easier to just strafe into their head rather than move your mouse and aim for their head. You can just strafe left just a couple steps or right just a couple steps and then pop off those shots, and they'll be headshots, they'll be perfect shots, and you won't necessarily need to do too much aiming. It's helped me quite a bit, especially in SWAT. It helps a lot. If you're just barely off, just strafe a little bit, and it is much more advantageous in certain scenarios. You'll have to practice that. It's not going to be the better way to go all the time, but there are certain scenarios where I would prefer to just strafe into the target rather than move my mouse and possibly shoot their chest or miss the shot entirely. The final general purpose tip that I have is crosshair placement. This is a similar concept to sprinting around a corner. You don't want to sprint around a corner and an enemy would be there and then you get gunned down because your weapon was lowered and you couldn't fire. Well, it's similar because you don't want to be going up a ramp aiming at the middle of the ramp rather than up at the top where an enemy could appear, or going around a corner aiming at a wall, or standing above them and aiming directly at the floor. You want to be aiming where an enemy could potentially be, not at the floor, not in the walls or whatever it may be. This is something I learned playing a little bit of Counter-Strike. It helps tremendously to get that first shot off, because looking at a floor and then an enemy popping up above your head, they're going to get the first couple shots almost every time, guaranteed. So keep your crosshairs up. You want to keep them about head level. The more you play, the more you'll figure out where head level is, just on a flat surface or so, but keep those crosshairs up. These are all tips I have personally used to help me improve at Halo on PC, as well as Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, pretty much any shooter that I've played, and it's helped me tremendously with Halo on PC. In the short amount of time I've been able to play, I work too much to be able to play a lot, but I have seen a tremendous improvement in my skill, especially in the aiming department, in the past week and a half. And I really hope they help all of you as well. Just please don't use these tips to wreck me in matchmaking, because you probably will. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like down below. I'm not necessarily asking for them, I'm not a big YouTube channel, but it makes me feel good whenever I get a like or two on my videos. If you would like to see more Halo tips videos, or even what I generally upload is RuneScape progress videos, kind of been stagnant on those lately, but feel free to subscribe. And if you have any tips for me between the gameplay you've seen in the background, the way I edit the videos, my commentary, any sort of helpful tips for me that could help me improve as a content creator, feel free to drop those in the comments down below. As always, peace out.